time to start, so we should probably head that way. If everybody, including staff, feel free to have a seat. It looks like we've got enough chairs for everybody, so we will go ahead and get started. I'm Sean Lewis. I'm the Director of Development Services for the City of San Angelo, and I want to welcome all of you here to our third annual San Angelo Development Forum. We started this event a couple of years ago in order to really promote quality development in San Angelo and to recognize those who are pulling that off, if you will, and also to introduce you to some of the services that we provide as a department. Development Services is actually made up of 8 different departments, and we've got the ones that kind of touch development here tonight. So I want to briefly tell you a little bit about those. Our GIS division handles our mapping for the city. GIS stands for Geographic Information Systems. And then we also have Community Development, now renamed Family Support. And they get all of our money from HUD for low-income housing, moderate-income housing, rehabs, repairs, and also are handling social service activities for the city now. Our MPO is also represented here today, and they handle transportation planning for the city, as well as the planning division, current planning, our comprehensive plan, zoning, and that types of things. And then we have permits here tonight. They're the PI, Permits and Inspections booth that you find back there with the kind of the private investigator theme. And then we also have Code Compliance. Code Compliance chose Transformers as their theme because they really are transforming neighborhoods, cleaning up those through code enforcement. Engineering Services, of course, handling all of our construction type activities, planning, design, inspections, survey work for the city. And then one of our co-sponsors is also here tonight. The Water Utilities Department is represented. And we put the best giveaways at her table. So at the end, we were hoping that would pull all of you over there. And some of you didn't get a chance to get over there. So at the end of the event, please make your way to the Water Utilities table. They always have the best giveaways to give away. I also want to mention a couple of other of our co-sponsors. Water Utilities, as I mentioned, as well as COSA DC. They are also a sponsor of this event. And then our primary sponsors are Downtown San Angelo, who have graciously provided all of our food and drink tonight. And we always like to recognize Lucy, and as well as her helper tonight, Susan, for their great work in providing us with food and refreshments. We also want to thank the Chamber of Commerce as one of our sponsors, the Small Business Development Center, and last but certainly not least, for the donation of this great facility, the San Angelo Museum of Fine Arts. So we thank you all for your support and appreciate that. At this time, I want to go ahead and introduce to you Paul Anthony. He's our development coordinator. He's the person who really tries to shepherd and does shepherd large-scale projects through the city so that we now kind of have an ombudsman within the city that's taking care of people's needs and interests within the organization and handling a lot of those types of things. He also has been very active recently in some policy development for us and handles our public information for our department. So Paul will be introducing our keynote speaker.
Well, good evening, and welcome again to this year's Development Forum. We have a new face presenting our annual State of Development speech, and you should listen closely because you probably won't hear him give this speech again. John Mark Hogg has filled in admirably as Mayor Pro Tempore since June, and he will, I'm sure, be happily handing the seat to a more permanent replacement after the runoff election next month. Since 2002, Councilman Hogg has represented City Council's single-member district, say that a few times fast, District 5, which includes the Santa Rita neighborhood and Angelo State University. San Angelo resident since 1992, Councilman Hogg lives here with his wife Claire and 2 children. And graduate of Baylor University, Councilman Hogg obtained his Doctor of Jurisprudence from St. Mary's University and is a partner with the Jackson Walker Law Firm, specializing in labor and employment law. As I said, since June, he has been San Angelo's Mayor Pro Tempore, and it is in that capacity that he appears tonight to give a brief overview of where San Angelo is today and where it is going as we head toward tomorrow. But that's my pleasure to introduce Mr. John Mark Hogg.
Well, I could say you know you have arrived when you go to lunch with your son at Glenn Middle School and you're sitting there at the table and this one young man comes over and he leans across the table and of course my son gets that look on his face and he says, this young boy goes, "Are you still the temporary mayor?" I said, "Yes, I am." And he runs back to the table, I told you it was him. My son is just like, oh. so to our future mayor, whoever that may be, you can be confident that you will awe seventh graders everywhere in your newfound role. So it is my pleasure to be here this evening, and I want to thank each and every one of you for being here, because it is because of you that San Angelo is where it is today, and it is because of you that San Angelo is going to be where it goes in the future. I think it's appropriate we have all these tables here with the hardworking city staff that partner with each of you on the various projects and areas in which you're involved in our city. And I'm glad to be here to present this address. The state of development in San Angelo is in a good position. I want to thank everyone for coming. It's my great pleasure to see so many people here this evening. I want to recognize our city staff that are here and other distinguished guests, too many to recognize individually. At this time last year, our nation was faced with an economy that was just weeks away, by the time this presentation was given last year, was just weeks away from what has, I guess, sort of commonly become to be called the Great Recession. I'm not sure that's an appropriate designation for it, but that's what it's kind of come to be known as. The credit would freeze, stocks would plummet, many would lose their homes, development across the country ground to a halt, and the bubble burst that we had been riding for several years before that. But here in San Angelo last year, there wasn't any talk of bubbles. Well, there was a lot of discussion, which we've continued to have over the years, of steady growth. San Angelo topped 90,000 people in census estimates for the first time. Local economic indicators showed positive but gently sloping trends. And this has always been, as each of you know, one of the blessings and the curses of San Angelo, is that we don't really get the high highs that the rest of the country or the state gets, but the good side of that is we are not forced to endure the lows either, since our economy has diversified in previous decades. The economic crisis of the past year has not left us untouched, however. We haven't seen the dramatic loss of wealth that other areas of the state and the nation have. Local residents have been hurt through layoffs, pay cuts, and credit slowdowns nevertheless. The slowing economy has affected development in San Angelo, as those of you that are in the business know. I would like to point out that despite these economic difficulties, we are still continuing steady growth. Census estimates for July estimated that nearly 92,000 people lived here in 2008, an addition of 1,000 people since the previous year. Since 2000, San Angelo has grown by nearly 4%. A small number, but if you want to compare that to what some of our sister cities have been doing, Abilene, for example, has a growth rate of less than 0.5%. Wichita Falls has shrunk by more than 1%. So I think we ought to be grateful for the circumstances with the moderate growth that we have had. As you see on the chart here, displaying, it kind of gives you that visual image of where we are in relation to some of these other cities. Now, of course, West Texas, being isolated as it is not growing as fast as some other areas of the states, particularly in the corridors around I-35 and I-45. In 2000, San Angelo was listed as one of the Texas 30 largest cities, and now we've dropped to number 35. But that slow, steady pace that has allowed us to weather that economic storm. We're maybe not growing as fast as other areas, but we don't have the painful losses that some of these other cities on the I-35 and I-45 corridors have experienced over the last year. Some of these losses can be evidenced by the permit numbers that we've had recently. In May, the Permits and Inspections Division issued no new commercial building permits. That's the first time that happened since 2004. Since February, new commercial permits have dropped to 20 from 30 in the same period the previous year. New residential permits have slid from 216 through September of last year to 148 through September of this year as we continue to experience the slowdown. As we can tell from those numbers, we're projected this year to see residential growth slide back to below the levels we saw in recent years, and even slightly below the levels we've seen for most of the decade. This is probably not a surprise, as many of you developers and home builders know in the audience. The economy has simply not been kind to development over this last year. The number of homes bought in 2008 was also the lowest this decade for the San Angelo area. There are about 800 vacant but developed lots. In other words, land with utilities waiting for someone to build on it in San Angelo. At our current rate, that works out to more than a 3-year supply of available lots to build on that already has the infrastructure in place. The building boom, of course, from these numbers, you can tell has slowed down significantly.